Architecture CodeX. If you want to see more, like, comment, share, and most importantly, subscribe.
History is full of all sorts of accidents and happenstance, which, if we are lucky, gives us some unusual and great architecture. In 711 AD, the Moors invaded the Iberian Peninsula from North Africa, and they pushed the Visigoths all the way back to what is now the French border. The Moors remained there until 1492, when King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella expunged the last of them from Spain. What you have then is 700 years of Christian and Islamic culture fighting, mixing it up, sharing technologies in the countries that we currently call Spain and Portugal. But in the waning days of the 13th and 14th centuries, as the Muslim forces retreated to the south, Ibn al-Ahmar of the Nasrid dynasty built a citadel palace garden on a plateau above the city we call Granada, Spain. This is the Alhambra. The Ottoman Empire held fast to its territories in the Mideast when it emerged around the same time as the Moors were retreating from Spain. Consequently, from the 15th through the 19th century, visiting Spain was the best way for the Europeans, and then ultimately the Americans, to learn about Islamic art and architecture since the Crusades, and visiting the Iberian Peninsula was considerably less bloody. So with Spain under Christian control, one could casually meander through the cities of Cordoba, Seville, and Granada and examine closely this exotic architecture style. Islamic art, which forbade graven images, found its decorative motifs in vegetation, geometry, and calligraphy, which festooned every surface and every architectural element. The decoration was relentless and refined. Still, it does not seem overdone like I find most Rococo art. Certainly the palace and the garden elements of the Alhambra evoke the power of the Muslim societies that controlled much of Spain. And it has been noted by others long before me that even their calligraphy seems to be sword-like. Scimitars in all sorts of configuration just enhance the power of the decoration. So, without trying to sound like a 1940s travelogue, let's look at some of the major buildings of the Alhambra. The Alhambra, Arabic meaning Red Castle, is the Muslim fortress built over the city of Granada starting 8 centuries ago in the Andalusian province of Spain. Like the prow of a ship, the earliest fortress construction occupied the western promontory overlooking the city and at the foot of the Sierra Nevada mountains, which provide a steady water supply. The citadel, or Al-Kazaba, as the Mohammedans would call it, is a massive rammed earth and brick structure with towers and barbicans, storehouses, barracks, all stretched along the massive perimeter walls. We see here the so-called Gate of the Arms, the characteristic horseshoe arch, typical of Islamic construction since they borrowed it from the Spanish Visigoths, perfecting its structure and beauty. There are many such gateways along the castle walls of the Alhambra. Many of the citadel towers were later converted to residences, such as the Princess Tower, with its delicate feminine interior decoration. Legend has it was here that the Sultan locked up his 3 beautiful daughters, Zaida, Zoraida, and Zorhaida, to protect them from suitors. Clever wooers serenaded the princesses from outside the castle walls below the tower and won their hearts. Also spectacular are the Nasrid palaces. These residences, built along the northern wall, are diverse in their art and decoration. Here is the throne room, adored with elaborate geometric tile mosaics, delicate plaster, molded column capitals, and the crowning glory of the inlaid wood ceiling, consisting of over 8,000 individually carved pieces. Not to be missed is the Palace of the Lions, with its famous court and fountain. Here too, the artistry of the pavilions reigns supreme as an architectural achievement, culminating in the most famous fountain of the Alhambra. The 12 lions spitting continuously due to the sophisticated hydraulic system where water siphoned from the series of underground canals fills the base in the center and then moves to each lion statue. The meaning of the Fountain of the Lions remains a mystery, even in modern times. Now let's move outside the walls, across a ravine to the exquisite gardens, which they are called the General Life, whose very name is another of the great mysteries of the Alhambra. These pavilions, with gardens and fountains, were the most elaborate in Europe since the Roman era, and hundreds of years before Versailles in France or Villa d'Este in Italy. Here the rich and powerful could get out of the harsh Spanish sun and lounge outside the fortress walls, enjoying the cooling spraying water, the airy breezes, and the shady belvederes surrounded once again with beautifully elaborate architecture. And so it is time to say goodbye to this preserved antiquity, harkening back centuries ago to a time of sultans and princesses, warriors and slaves, harems and troubadours, artists and architects. So long to the Alhambra in Granada, Spain. The first reaction of the conquering Spanish was not to preserve the Alhambra. That simply was not how people thought of things back then. And in fact, Charles V of Spain felt the place needed to be Christianized with appropriate European architecture. Charles appreciated the location and the infrastructure of the Alhambra, but demolished part of the palaces to build his own Renaissance palace. Later on, Napoleon's army would do even more damage to the historic and beautiful buildings as they modified the Alhambra to be a 19th century fortress as part of his conquests in Iberia. It was a short time later that American author Washington Irving, acting as ambassador to Spain, took an interest in the citadel. His 1832 book, Tales of the Alhambra, depicted the peasant squatters who occupied the ruins, named and described the buildings themselves, and also included traditional Muslim folktales. The popularity of the book created a wave of people from around the world who were interested in preserving the site. Through preservation and substantial restoration, their efforts have brought us the Alhambra we see today, which is visited by more than 2 million people annually. Once again, a building entering into lore, becoming story, is the secret to its preservation because it endears the building to subsequent generations. History and time created an opportunity for many thousands of artisans, architects, and construction workers to work their craft into a totality that was much greater than any of them could achieve individually. So it is a good occasion to take a look at architecture not as we do today, which is the result of some genius individual thinking of things, but as a collective product of humanity. So rather than try to summarize the Alhambra with some sort of pithy aphorism, I think I might just say, I'm Michael Molinelli, and this is Architecture CodeX.